My best friend and I were in the spare bedroom of her upstairs. From what I remember, there were three: her bedroom, her sister's bedroom, and one where old things just kind of sat and collected dust. Anyways, we was sitting in there in that room and watching Shrek. All of a sudden, the picture on the wall began moving back and forth pretty fast, and then it just stopped. Then an old WWE toy they had started going off. We kind of did a look at each other for a split second, and after that, we both got up, ran screaming out the house. We ran downstairs out of the house to the camper and stayed out there for a bit. I remember her mom yelling at us, telling us to quit making things up. Then, as we were about to leave the camper to go back inside, we both heard a voice yell, "Get away from the pool!" And we ran screaming back inside. I have to admit that the TV in the camper was on, so it could have been just us being scared, and the TV just happens to say those words when we were right next to the pool, but it was still creepy. I wasn't there to witness, but my best friend claimed that after her older sister had her baby, she would see shadows in the baby's room, over the crib. Also, my friend would say that she felt something grab her around the finger on multiple occasions. She said she was sitting in the computer chair upstairs in the spare room, and she remembers falling backwards off of it. When she opened her eyes, it was a scary looking face inches from hers, just staring at her. Of course, this part is all second-hand experience, but I can say after having my first paranormal experience in that house, I'm a believer. Something in that house, mainly upstairs, just did not feel right to me. I'm so glad she moved away. Most of the time, I actually love being in graveyards. I like walking around and looking at the stones and feeling the calming feelings that I'd get. However, there is a smallish graveyard in our hometown that is known for frequent paranormal activity. It's actually pretty high historically valued. Rumours are the graveyard founders have a daughter who was buried there that was a witch. You can tell her grave apart because it has a strange symbol on it. They actually do tours there yearly. I noticed all the time that I get a bad, uneasy feeling whenever I'm there. My friends and I as teenagers would go there ghost hunting at night. I actually had an entire string of film with nothing but orbs in almost every picture. They seemed to be attracted to my ex-boyfriend. He was abusive in almost all the pictures. I had never taken pictures at a graveyard with that much orb activity. The scariest part was when I was with a group of friends, of course, ghost hunting. We thought we were smart because we burned sage before we went into the graveyard and figured it would protect us. Anyways, this graveyard is next to a wooded area. It was complete darkness when we got there, aside from some graves that had lights on them. I looked over into the woods, not near a grave or anything, and there was this huge figure. It was animal and had red eyes. I will literally never forget that moment, and I felt nothing but fear. The next moment I looked back, it had vanished. Could it have been an animal? Maybe, but I don't know. I wonder if that graveyard was hiding something more sinister. If there was some type of negative spirit there. There are also videos of investigations recording EVPs and call some pretty crazy things. I've always considered myself to be sensitive to negative energies. My husband's father house is scary for me. I spent the night there long ago when we were just casual, and I have a horrible feeling that stuck with me even after I left the house. I'd never felt depressed and just off like that. The other time I spent the night in that house was when I was on leave. I was military. I came back and stayed the night with him. I slept downstairs this time in the living room. I literally felt sick to my stomach the entire time. I stayed up all night terrified, as did my husband, due to my constant "I'm scared," and trying to get him to let me sleep in my car. A little background on the house. He personally has not had a paranormal experience in that house. However, his mother passed away upstairs in the room I first spent the night in. I do believe she was on hospice and had a hospital bed, and all up there in the room, and unfortunately died from cancer. This was years ago, and his dad was with a new lady. His dad's girlfriend They had been together forever, not married. Also died from cancer, this time in the downstairs living room area. I told my husband, and he just doesn't get it. He says even if his mum or dad's girlfriend were haunting the place, they would give off good vibes because they were both wonderful people. He told me his mom wouldn't want to scare me. We have visited since, and always an uneasy feeling. It's less when his dad is home, but when we're both in that house alone, it really hurts. However, it still isn't right. Around 2 a.m. Eastern Time, one night last year, I was laying in the bed on my back, face towards the ceiling, with my phone in my hand, probably scrolling through social media. That's when something from the corner of my eye caught my attention. A moving line of a shadow approximately 1 foot in width, moving across the ceiling from the furthest corner of my room, southwest, to the corner nearest to where I was laying down, northeast. The interesting part about this shadow was that it was definitely opaque, or very densely translucent. And the shadow was only on the ceiling, and not by any connecting side walls within my room. I had Christmas lights statued around the perimeter of my room, so if by chance it was something that was maybe crossing over those lights and causing a shadow, then the shadow should have trickled down onto the surrounding walls as well. The shadow moved at a pace slow enough for my eye to catch and follow, but fast enough that I didn't really have time to turn on my camera and catch anything on my phone. I will have to say that if I tried harder in that moment to turn on my phone camera at the pace it was going, I probably would have caught it. I was too in awe and confused to do anything than just stare at it. In my heart, I felt that it was something paranormal, so I tried to remain calm and peaceful. I didn't feel any overwhelming sense of negativity that I had felt once a couple of years ago when I had a terrifying experience with sleep paralysis, but rather just quietness and peace. When this shadow passed over and disappeared into the ceiling corner, I stood up, checked around the lights to see if any bug, I was in denial for a while, caused the shadow, and moved my hands up and down the lights to see if they caused any potential 1 foot thick moving shadows on my ceiling. Surprisingly, no. I have two windows in my room, both of which have thick window curtains, so I doubt any light would have passed through those, as well as a huge bush covering my windows outside, so that light cannot be permissible. This incident happened a long while ago, when I was in the fourth standard, 9 years old. My dad was a police officer in a small town in India, and we used to live in a police colony. A colony of small two-brick houses spread across an area. There were in total 64 houses spread across, row-rise, the area in a group of 6. The area nearby to our colony was mostly empty, and behind the last row of houses, there were 2 graveyards, one Christian and one Muslim. Being a kid, me and my friends used to play around here and there whenever we got the chance. Back in that time, power cuts were a frequent thing in our area, and we were used to just come out and play when there was no power backups in those houses. One day we had a power cut at around 8 p.m. at night, and as usual, me and my friends came out to play. On the same day morning, we found out about an Indian blackberry tree in the Muslim graveyard. So we decided that we'll play hide and seek for 30 minutes and then raid the graveyard to collect some blackberries. So we played in the Christian graveyard for 30 minutes, lying on the graves, hiding behind it, running over them, and then jumped over the fence to enter the Muslim graveyard and raid the blackberry tree. The tree was pretty distant from the entrance of the graveyard. We were moving silently and cautiously as we didn't want to get caught by the caretaker. We reached the blackberry tree and started to throw stones and collect the blackberries from the ground. Suddenly, we saw something very strange and frightening. We saw a cow-like creature slowly going down in the ground. Being kids, we were terrified after seeing this. We thought it was some ghost and ran back to the entrance of the graveyard. We came out of the graveyard and ran all the way back to our homes. Later, we found out there was a fresh grave on that area, and a cow actually stepped on it and sunk into the ground. After eating dinner, I went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, I noticed some pain in both of my feet. I looked at them and there were scratches all over my leg and feet. I went to my mom and asked her, "What happened?" How did I get those? I didn't even have them the night before. My mum looked at me suspiciously and said, "You are joking, right?" I said no. She said, "You don't remember what you did last night?" That's what I did. She said something that still stirs fear in me. She said, "Last night, you woke up around 1 p.m. and started screaming in some unrecognizable language, scratching all over your feet and legs. We tried consoling you, waking you up, but you didn't stop for 10 minutes. We called Ozha from nearby area. He came and made you fall asleep with his holy water. Ozha is a person who deals with paranormal beings or perform dark arts. Till today, I can't explain what happened to me that night. I don't even remember scratching myself. But after that day, I used to wear a holy locket for like 5 or 6 years, and I avoided graveyards or morgues." My daughter A turned 18 a few months ago, and she wanted to live by herself. I totally agreed, since I think it's the best way to mature. She wanted a place with a garden, and since renting one would be crazy expensive in a city, we decided she'd better live at my parents' weekend house. There's a beautiful living room in this house where we keep the ashes of many relatives. My own mother's side grandparents, grandaunts, and great grandaunts were there, in urns placed on shelves with spotlights. My kid loved living by herself, although some freaky things have been going on. One night she went down to the kitchen for a night snack and found out that there was light coming from the living room. The doors have glasses. All the spotlights above the urns were turned on. She was too afraid to go by herself and called her boyfriend. They entered the room and turned them off, but she was kind of scared since they usually don't get into that room, and the only way to turn the spotlights on is by being inside. No big deal, she said. Another night, her boyfriend and herself heard the piano play a few notes. They got really scared and the boy went down, prepared to find an intruder. But the piano room was locked and there was nobody inside. Then, the other day, she was sending a WhatsApp message to her dad while preparing herself some dinner when once again, the piano played a single note. She got really nervous. Her dad sent me the message trying to laugh off our daughter's scare, but he told me he would have been afraid too in her place. I called her then, trying to reassure her, telling her to go check if there wasn't a trapped bird or anything, but she didn't dare go in. I told her to talk to the dead grandparents and tell them it's great to have them around. The next day, she finally went to check. Not only the piano room was locked, but the piano cover was closed too. Not the first time weird things happen to us, so I'm not totally surprised. But then again, I wonder, how can a ghost channel enough energy to do something like this? So being born in Cincinnati, Ohio, the paranormal is pretty normal. Also, being born to spirit world-aware parents, once again, for this story's sake, fairly normal. I would stare at things as a baby or coo at things my parents couldn't see. This spectre has even saved me from my toddler self when I almost fell down the 23 steps to the basement. My mom thanked the house ghost greatly that day and burnt some incense for them. Once again, normalcy. The scariest thing at the house was my dad, not the spirits who would keep mom and I company. Now, when I was 3 years old, my parents divorced, causing me to move in with my mother to her parents in Kettering, Ohio. It was a nice neighborhood built off the old farmland Polo Farms. The farmhouse was about a mile away, close to the elementary school I would end up going to. Anyways, I hated my new room. Midday during May and I'm screaming about the demon in the closet. Crying about how the demon is going to eat me at night. This never went away and slowly got worse as I got older. I could hear growls, get yanked out of bed shakes, glowing red and green eyes, and it would tell me terrible things about my family or myself. My mother randomly denied the spirit realm and anything weird going on with my grandmother's house shortly after moving in. So being a toddler, this rocked my foundation. Divorce, change of rules, and almost overnight, everything seemed apathetic to what I was seeing. My loving and understanding mother would deny my claims in front of her mother, but in secret would explain what she saw something too. There's a lot of stuff that went on that belongs in a different forum, but didn't help in this story. Yes, I do have lots of trauma from the humans in my life. Now, after a year or two of me begging to co-sleep with Mom, I never used to have an issue sleeping alone. Mom decided to rearrange my bedroom as a pleasant surprise and hoped it would help decrease my issues being in the room after sunset. At first, I was excited. I felt like a big girl and I was thrilled I got my father's mother's mirror, who I'll just call my grandmother from now on. Grandmother and I were always close, so her dying 13 years before I was born was never an issue. Now, I understand being an adult why my mom thought this mirror would discreetly help my spirit issues with this room. My grandmother was a white witch and had blessed that mirror. I'll get to this mirror later though. Anyways, the activity got worse. I saw dead little girls in both mirrors in my room, a floating lady in white applying makeup in my grandmother's mirror. Things would chase me down the hallway. I could hear my grandma bad-mouthing me to my mother even if she whispered it. The demon taught me how to use air vents to listen in on conversations when it couldn't amplify the conversations. I started sleepwalking and normally would find myself in the bathroom on the floor with the light on. I would cry for my grandmother to save me, and sometimes the activity would die down. I could smell her perfume. This only angered my grandma, who was alive and was practically raising me. My great-grandma, my grandma's mother, would try to console her daughter by reminding her that the women in our family are gifted, and if my dad's mother wanted to be a part of my life and make me go to bed easier to accept her, etc. Great-grandma also got on my mom for allowing her own mother, her child, to dismiss my gifts and to support me, even if it was behind her own child's back. Great-grandma also told grandma she'd tell me first when she'd die because she supported me that much. Anyways, I'm about 8 or 9 now, and I've grown to not sleep in my room by hiding throughout the house after bedtime, or waiting for sheer exhaustion to overwhelm me. I'd still wake up screaming, sleepwalking, etc. I'd run to grandma, curl up on her lap, and cry that something is wrong. I was extremely adamant that somebody was missing from our family. Then suddenly, after 45 minutes, I said, "It's okay now," and trotted off to bed without a fight. I explained during breakfast, someone walked with me and tucked me into bed. Turns out when I stopped being unconsolable, that's when she died. So she's probably the one who tucked me in. Oh, before I forget, the mirror that belonged to my grandmother, the one my mom carelessly moved into my room as a child. Got moved into mom's room when we moved to Indiana. After 1 week, I never saw it up again and laughed at my mom if she liked the lady in white. Of which she restored, she wished she saw the lady in white. I've never known exactly what she saw, and she took it to her grave. Spoke to my dad about the mirror, and allegedly his mother acquired it back in the 1950s, discreetly from a family whose daughter who killed herself, shortly after getting the mirror herself. The mother of the woman felt like it coaxed her daughter to suicide, and it was trying to lure her as well. My mother thought it was safe because of the seal that's on the back of the mirror. Sadly, the seal only contained it so much, and you always see someone or something in the background. Things only projected a few feet of it. Now the seal waning like a moon and the back part is coming unglued. My once quiet apartment now has shadow people who roam. I'm currently in the process of resealing it, but I have to figure out how to just turn into a normal mirror until my daughter can go on protecting people from it. Grandma always assumed I complained for attention, as it was very obvious I was getting abused when I would visit my dad in Cincinnati, when he wasn't in jail or too busy for his only child. However, a lot of stuff my grandma did only amplified issues I had, and created mental issues I'm currently treating. As a teenager, when Mum and I moved to Indiana, I never outgrew it. I'm now 26 with a daughter of my own. When I went to live with my grandma and my own child, it obviously didn't last long. We went to visit the childhood home I moved into from Cincinnati. I still saw the demon in the room, and the new owners stated that room always is the coldest of the house, which doesn't make sense. My daughter at 6 months old bursted out in tears upon entering my room, and all the old people were in shock, because she went from sleeping to screaming bloody murder instantly. I excused us and tucked her back into the car, while I stood outside having a cigarette. My grandma came out saying if she didn't know better that I'd coaxed my daughter to freak out in my old room. Obviously, I rolled my eyes and dismissed her claims as she's coming down with dementia or Alzheimer's. Really ate me up, this one woman, in a spiritual family. Made it her mission to disbelieve everything I've ever gone through. Out of all the demons and ghosts in that house, when she dies, she'll be the worst. We moved into a small town in Southern California when I was about 3 in the early to mid 80s. I lived with my parents and 2 older brothers. When we first moved in, I remembered there were parts of the house that I always felt afraid to go into: the garage, the closet under the stairway, and my room. This house was 2 stories, so my parents had the downstairs master bedroom, and my brothers and I each had our own room upstairs. As a little kid, I would always hear and see things, and my parents would tell me it was just my imagination. There were times that my door would go from fully closed to opening up in the middle of the night. I would hear someone walk up the stairs and pace back and forth in front of my door. Then the knob would turn and open slowly. I would think it was my brothers at first, so I would just try to catch them, but they were never there. There were times I would see a figure walk into my room and I would cover myself with a blanket, and other times I would wake up with someone caressing my hair. I was always scared, but not terrified, and never felt threatened, so I got used to it. The first time I did feel terrified, we'd gone to a family party and my brothers spent the night at my aunt's house and I came back with my parents. I believe I was about 7 or 8. Since I was too scared to sleep upstairs with my brothers gone, I stayed in the living room downstairs. I remember watching TV. My parents were already asleep and snoring away. I finally got tired and turned off the TV. About 2 seconds later, I heard a TV turn on upstairs, and it seemed like it was a continuation of what I had been watching. So I slowly started to cover myself with a blanket because I started to get scared. After about another 10 or 15 seconds, I hear 2 muffled voices separate from the TV, and it sounds like they're arguing, but I can't understand what they're saying. Not long after, I hear a loud thud like someone pushed over the dresser, followed by footsteps running around, and they start running down the stairs, and that's when I take off to my parents. My parents woke up when they heard me run in, and I told them what happened, but they didn't believe me. They told me to get my blanket and pillow, but I'm too scared to go. So my mum gets up, stops at the doorway, and then turns around. She didn't say what she heard or maybe saw, but she asked my dad to go. My dad goes and gets my stuff, and we all go to sleep. The next morning, my parents go upstairs and everything is in place, so they told me it was just my imagination. They had never believed me when I told them that I would see or hear things. After that day, though, many more things happened. Over the years, more unexplained things happened. My parents had my sisters, who are 10 to 12 years younger, and one started having experiences too. I moved into my apartment at the end of February this year, a studio apartment. I really like it, and it's been built in recent years, so it's fairly new. Most people stay here for about 3 years before finding a better place. The doors in the apartment automatically shut themselves and lock, and you have to use a key to get in anywhere. I have one set of keys and my boyfriend has the other one. There's no other spares. A few weeks ago, I was convinced that there was some paranormal activity going on in my studio, especially because I'd leave my earrings a certain way and come back home and it's been changed. At first I just waved it off, but then it kept on happening. I started thinking about getting sage or something. I investigated it, and it turns out I was changing them without even realizing it, as the back of my hand would move everything around unintentionally. So no sage, no cleansing. Before I moved there, I was getting paranoid about my previous home because I felt watched at night, but nothing ever happened. Whenever I sleep, I wake up to change my sleeping position as I'm constantly hugging a pillow or trying to make sure I don't sleep on my back. I woke up at 5 a.m. to change my sleeping position. I was laying on my stomach, one leg up, left hand to the side and right hand close to my face. I hadn't fallen asleep yet because there was some ringing in my ears. It started getting louder and louder, and I was getting hot as hell. It felt like something or someone lay on my left arm, so I couldn't move it. But I could move everything else, so I wasn't sleep paralysis. I've had these before. Anyway, I hear breathing, and I feel as if someone's or something has just placed its hands on my head. I'm awake this entire time, breathing, but I don't want to open my eyes to see something I wouldn't want to. I then think maybe it's my boyfriend who's come over, as sometimes he comes to sleep over in the middle of the night. So I jerk up and turn around and nothing. Nobody there. Ringing in my ear stops, heat around me goes, and there's no one. I'm perplexed and can't explain what's going on, but I eventually go back to sleep, hugging a pillow and staying on my side. This story took place at my childhood home in Minnesota. I live in Oklahoma now. My sister and I were home alone and bored, so we decided to play some creepy games. Like the playing card game, which is probably the least deadly game to play in my opinion. Once that didn't pan out any interesting results, my sister and I decided that we wanted to play the Ouija board instead. The only problem with that being that we didn't have one, so we had to make one. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a piece of paper and a picture reference later, we had our board. My sister, we'll call her Kay, shut all the curtains and blinds in the living room and kitchen, since that's where we were playing while I collected a few candles to light. Once we were settled, I decided that I wanted to record our game with my phone and asked her to wait. Though, fair warning, I do have an Android, so the footage was dark and grainy. I was lamenting my woes when it happened. As I fiddled with my cell trying to get it to brighten, I turned it towards the window, staring at my surroundings through the screen. Then I shifted on the love seat in order to direct the camera down the hall leading the front door. Now, on the corner right next to the living room was the door to the laundry room. This door was shut, and that's important information because with the way this thing appeared, it wouldn't have been possible for a human to do. When I panned the camera over, it only took a few seconds before a humanoid head popped out from the wall, long dark hair shifting with the movement. I immediately stopped the film and tossed my phone onto the cushion next to me as I began to open curtains, not daring to move over to the light switch, which was right where that thing had appeared. Kay asked what was wrong, and not wanting to scare her, I waited until we were out the house before telling her, then letting her watch the video. The scariest part of the interaction was that, outside of the screen of my cell phone, there was nothing there. So my friends and I often had mass sleepovers in high school, usually rotating whose house we were staying at. We're at my friend's, let's call her Sam, house when another encounter with the paranormal happened, since we were dumb shit at everybody's houses. So for context, my friends and I loved making up fun games by kind of mashing the ones we already knew together. For example, we had one called Blind Tag, where the tagger was blindfolded and tried to find the rest of us, which we tried our best to be silent. This of course took place on only the top or ground floors of houses to avoid anyone getting injured on the stairs and to give the tagger a fighting chance. It was kind of a Frankenstein mix of Marco Polo, hide and seek and tag. Except this time, we put a couple of twists on the game. Twist 1, we play at around 1 in the morning in the dark. And 2, we made it so that the goal for everyone except the tagger was to get downstairs and into Sam's room without being caught, like the game Ghost in the Graveyard. Now, I know I just said that we usually avoided stairs, and we did, but there were a lot of us, so one floor wasn't going to cut it, and everyone agreed it would probably be fine. That's teenagers for you. Anyways, to set up. So stepping into the front door, you came into the landing with 2 sets of stairs, one leading up to the living room, kitchen and dining room with 1 bedroom and bathroom, the second going down to a second living room, laundry room, 2 bedrooms, our goal, 1 bathroom and a crawl space under the stairs. The taggers started downstairs and after about 60 seconds made their way to the second floor to begin searching. Though, for safety reasons, we had some code words that everyone knew, to make sure we all knew what was going on. We had 1 for paranormal instances, since we've had a ton of those, and also 1 for your run-of-the-mill injuries. We were a couple of rounds in, my sister Kay being the one in this time, and I went upstairs to hide along with several others. I immediately made a beeline for the dark alcove that I liked to hide in. It was located between Sam's dad room and the bathroom, both doors staying shut through the entire game since everyone agreed that they were off limits. So that was where I hid with another girl, Lee. I sat down with my back against the wall with the doors to my left and right, with Lee in front of me, sitting between my legs, her back to my chest. We were only a few minutes into the round when I heard it. There was a dull thud that had come from the closed bathroom door to my left. I rationalised that the noise was probably just because Lee had been pushed adjusting her position and had accidentally knocked against the door. Though I should have known better, because then she asked in a whisper, "Was that you?" And my blood turned to ice. It was like something straight out of a horror movie. No sooner than she said it, another bang came from the bathroom door, this time louder and more aggressive. We both scrambled up and I called out "Code Black" as we ran, and everyone heeded the warning, bolting down the stairs with us to reconvene in Sam's room. The first thing I do is ignore the questions being flung at me by adrenaline-fueled teens and ask everyone to tell me where they were. After everyone had confirmed, with people backing up others' statements, that no one had been in the bathroom, then I finally explained why I had called emergency, Lee backing up my story, to everyone's shock and excitement. Yeah, we were dumb. Then we combed through the house, turning on lights as we went, but when we got to the upstairs bathroom in question and opened the door, it was empty. My friend Sam and I were doing some cleaning. I honestly can't remember why, but I was washing the front door while she scrubbed the window next to it. To her right was the staircase leading upstairs. The front door was open, but the screen was closed, and we each had a bucket of soapy water and a rag as we dutifully cleaned. My sister Kay was outside for some reason, so we were alone in the house. That's when the knocking started. Now, I was used to such noises since it was a frequent sound in the house, along with the clicking, like someone tapping on the walls, and footsteps all coming from the second floor when we were downstairs. So I was wholly uninspired by the knocking and just kind of tuned it out. Unfortunately, Sam didn't have the same idea. She brought up the sound and I suggested just ignoring it since it wasn't really bothersome, but Sam was curious. Now my friend was kind of a shit talker, so she began to mess around. She called the entity names and demanded that I did more and more outrageous things. The entire time that she was talking, I got a horrible feeling of dread that got worse the longer she kept goading the ghost into doing something, and found myself unable to tear my gaze away from the base of the staircase. I was in the middle of suggesting that she knock it off when she interrupted me. "If you're really here and actually scary, you'd do something here interesting." And holy shit, that had to have been the worst thing for her to do in that moment. Suddenly, there was a deafening growl from the top of the stairs before footsteps began to thunder down towards the two of us. I panicked, my fight or flight response kicking in as I tore the screen door open and launched myself out the house, quickly followed by Sam. We were barefoot and without our coats or phones as we stood in the driveway, slowly making our way down the sidewalk leading to the house as we got colder, but we didn't dare go inside. We must have been outside for like 15 minutes when Kay arrived. She asked what the hell we were doing outside without our gear, and we both began talking at once. Once she got the full story, she cautiously went into the house to collect our things, and afterwards, we spent the rest of the day at my buddy Sam's house.